meeting will be recorded for future dissemination. And I want to thank Carol Kosery on a committee for very kindly volunteering to take our meeting minutes this evening, which will also be posted on the planning site, the website dedicated to the plan, which is at this URL you'll see on the screen. So without any further ado, would like to introduce. Yes, Carol, please.
Because I'm taking roll. Allie
Yes.
C. What's your last name? Allie C.
Oh, hi there. My name is Allie Chowbay. Chowbay.
Okay. And I think I've got everybody. Okay.
Okay, great. If I could just ask everybody to mute, because there's some feedback that's happening periodically, that would be great. And especially for the sake of our speakers, who I have the great privilege of introducing. And I want to thank both Greg Assant and Seth Adams for making time in their busy schedules this evening. Greg Assant, Deputy Director of the Department of General Services of Montgomery County, and Seth Adams. Seth, I believe your proper title is Director of the Division of Construction for MCPS. Is that right?
I'm Director of the Department of Facilities Management over here at MCPS.
The Director of Department of Facilities Management. Thank you. Pardon me. I was looking for you online to learn more about you, and I stumbled on a previous position. Forgive me. I'm sorry. But both of you, thank you very much for taking the time. The committee has put together a couple of salient questions that I put on the screen here, and in deference to your presentation this morning, thank you for touching on these key questions. I won't read them aloud, but we'd appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over to I guess we go in alphabetical order if you want. Seth, if you want to go first, or Greg, depending on how both of you would wish to proceed.
I think it's probably best if Greg maybe starts us off.
Sure.
You know, DGS is definitely taking a leading role here, and I'm here to support. Just talk about from an MCPS perspective where we stand as well.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and again, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the invite and an opportunity to update. We actually, as you know, this has been a multi-year effort, and so we do have some news to share that is, I won't call it late breaking, but it did happen on Monday night. And Kosi, I sent you a PDF. I wasn't able to cut and paste it into the chat for others, but perhaps you could while I'm sharing the update. But it's a PDF of the Rockville City Council agenda for their mayor and city council meeting Monday night. As I think you've been updated in previous meetings, the county executive, as part of his capital improvements program and budget, submitted aka a CIP project to construct a restoration center, a new detention center, and ultimately use the balance of the site for a new MCPS bus depot at the 7 Lock site in Rockville. And that is a part of the CIP that was sent over to council earlier this year and ultimately approved. The bus depot part of the project, which we characterized as phase 3, and put kind of a target date for the CIP purposes beyond 6 years, but we were a little bit more candid with the Rockville City Council and suggested this was probably 10 years out. Be that as it may, so there was no funding for the bus depot itself at 7 Locks, and just funding appropriated for the restoration center in MCDC. That said, we were invited to speak before the city council earlier this year, I believe in February, and then invited back, and the Department of Health and Human Services and DGS, myself, Seth was in the audience but didn't have a speaking role. But we were invited back on July 11th to present an update as to how we were progressing with these plans. After that update, the city council discussed the county's plans for 7 Locks and directed the city manager to prepare a draft letter from the city council to the county executive, and that is the packet that I've attached or in an email to Nkosi, and if we can distribute that in Nkosi, that'd be great. I just, again, I wasn't able to put it into the chat, but the long and short of the letter, which I believe was ratified and voted to send on Monday night, this just past Monday night, the 1st, was effectively notice from the Rockville City Council to the county executive that not only did they not want us to park buses and construct a depot at 7 Locks, but they also didn't want us to proceed with the restoration center at 7 Locks. So we are just in receipt of that. In fact, I'm not even sure if the county executive has actually they transmitted that letter yet, but they did approve it on Monday night. So we're expecting it. We know what it's going to say. I say all that to say this, which is the Restoration Center is a health and human services facility that serves folks that are diverted from the criminal justice system and not introduced into the jail system, and rather deflected into a health and human services and what they're referred to as Restoration Center. And we can attach a PowerPoint presentation. The reason that's important because it's really the first phase of our long-term plans for 7 Locks. And the final phase, of course, which was the relocating the buses and doing a depot. And so the city has been very candid and come out against the county's efforts to even begin the planning and design of facilities for 7 Locks. And so I wanted to, make sure that that was first and foremost available so that you could see what the city was intending to send the county. And again, it's basically, they just ratified this on the Monday night's meeting. So I don't know what the county executive's reaction is. I don't have that information available. I don't know what the response will be. And it's that fresh. So that's kind of the most recent information. I'll hit the pause button there just to see if you have any questions, Jeff and others. And if not, I can continue to kind of update on our internal progress.
Well, so you obviously don't know the county executive's reaction. But what can Montgomery County do to push back against the city of Rockville on this?
So as it relates to the Restoration Center, because that's the first facility that we had planned for the site, and obviously it's a big site. So the way that we presented it to the city was we first want to do the Restoration Center next to the existing MCDC, or the Montgomery County Detention Center, aka the jail, as people refer to it, that's been there since 1961 and well established. So the Restoration Center was the first building. Then we were going to demolish the existing detention center and build a new one, and next to the co-located with the Restoration Center. And then ultimately, because those two facilities would be much smaller in scale and would leave a large balance of the site available for another use, it was that plan to introduce the notion of a bus depot. Now, granted, the depot itself at 7 Locks would not be a mirror image or a replica of what is currently on Crabs Branch. Currently on Crabs Branch, we have a depot facility with surface parking for approximately 425 buses. And so that's not what we were suggesting for 7 Locks, because candidly, it wouldn't fit. But we were at least trying to co-locate the depot there, and then suggest that some of the parking of buses overnight could be done in other locations, i.e. at high schools and other sites that we might identify. In terms of the county's options, in terms of pushing back on the city, you know, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not in a position to talk about what the county's potential options might be. This is all fairly new in terms of the information. We'll need to consult with the county executive, and as I'm sure all of you can imagine, that's pretty challenging right now. And it, you know, so it's tough, and so I don't have a good timeline as to when we'll be able to meet with Mark and discuss the city's letter and get his response. But I can tell you that's an important issue. It's an initiative of his. He knows full well that, and has, I think, told this committee as well as others in community meetings that getting the buses off of the current site is one of his priorities, and that hasn't changed. And so the Department of General Services, as well as our partners and colleagues over at MCPS and Seth and his team, will continue to move the effort forward. And if not 7 locks at some point, we will continue to identify alternate sites that we can locate the buses. But obviously, this is a bit of an obstacle for what the current plan is and what the CIP reflects. And so we're working through that right now.
I just want to comment that I actually watched your July 11th meeting with the city of Rockville, and I was rather appalled. I get the sense that the city of Rockville wants the county to turn this that they don't even want the jail, and that they want you to turn this property over to developers to build townhouses and mixed use, to give Rockville more tax dollars. I thought it was kind of appalling.
Yeah, and if you did watch the meeting on the 11th, you know, you probably caught at least my response to the notion that they're unhappy with the jail, the MCDC facility being there, and that needed to go as well. And the fact of the matter is that facility has been in that location since 1961 in some form or fashion. And quite frankly, the county is not in a position, nor are we considering relocating that facility anywhere else. We went through this discussion when we put the correctional facility up in Clarksburg back in the mid and late 90s. The detention center and central processing unit that is there that serves the district courts and in downtown Rockville is a support facility, and it's not planned to go anywhere else, and will stay right where it is. So there is that. We were simply proposing to co-locate some of these new projects that we believe would enhance both the programmatic needs, but also the services that we provide to Montgomery County, but also to the city of Rockville Police and the rest of the county residents at this location. But again, we'll figure out what the response is when we consult with the county executive and go from there.
Thanks, Greg, very much. Apologies, I was on mute earlier, and thanks to Mike Leventhal for pointing that out to me. What I'd like to do is hold on further questions if we can, and ask Greg if he has any additional parts of his brief he wants to share. And if not, if we could turn to you, Seth, for your brief and addressing the questions that the committee has would be great. And once we have all these questions addressed, then I'd like to open it up for questions, and then we can move to the next part of our agenda. We did dedicate only 30 minutes to this, but we're kind of halfway there right now. So I'll stop talking. Greg, if you have anything else, please share.
No, I want to make sure that we cover all the information, so you can circle back to me, Jeff. Thanks.
Okay. Seth, why don't we turn it over to you? Thanks.
So I'll just pick up where Greg left off in terms of where MCPS is in the relocation process. So MCPS and DGS have had ongoing conversations just around, obviously what it would look like should the a a depot structure be built at 7 locks, and then even beyond that, if that were not to happen, what are some of the alternatives? I would say from MCPS perspective, the depot model at 7 locks certainly was something that was exciting to us. While that would not fit all the buses that we need to ultimately park, it does allow for the operational element, the maintenance, the inspections, those critical elements that are required from a transportation operation element. We are starting to explore what it looks like to park buses on high school sites. That's something that's been asked, quite a bit over the years. And as we're transitioning to our electrification of our fleet, that obviously looks a little different than what it did when we were talking about diesel buses. So we are starting to work with our internal engineers around how does that work from a fire access? How does it work from a daily maintenance perspective? How do we function in snow removal, operations, those sorts of things. So it is doable, and it is something that we're exploring. But certainly it's, from our perspective, we still need some form of from a depot operation for those elements, such as inspections and other state required elements throughout the year. So that was certainly, as I sat in the audience, I certainly was as disappointed as others. I would say as from a school system standpoint, our department is also responsible for managing construction, enrollment projections, those sorts of things. And as sort of that correlation between new development and infrastructure, as new development comes into the county, certainly we start to see a need for more school buses. We start to see a need for some of this infrastructure. And so it is disappointing when we continue to see that let's just invest in development and not think about infrastructure. So for me, this is a great opportunity to be part of this group and advocate, alongside of you for some of these provisions. But that's where we are. Obviously, you are aware that we are electrifying the fleet. In terms of what that means for the Shady Grove depot location, is that infrastructure will go in, but we have provisions with the contractor for that to be relocated. Obviously, that's not something that we were very clear that that's not a permanent location, but we are under a sort of a timeline in terms of how many buses we would expect to electrify and how in certain pockets of service area throughout the county. So that is starting to happen, at various depots, including the Shady Grove depot. But that's really it from our bus, MCPS bus update. I would say we, parking buses at high schools is again achievable, but it will be discussed as part of our CIP, because there are changes that need to happen on our sites, at our high school sites, in order for that to happen. So we are prepared to start those conversations this fall throughout our CIP process, and certainly can keep the group updated as we navigate both superintendent recommendation and into board deliberations, and then ultimately from a board to a county executive and county council request. So that's really where we are, and obviously we have great partnership with Greg and his team. And this has been a long road, and there's been many sites explored along the way. I would say, just in ending, some of the sites, I would just float one out, which also was in the city of Rockville. There was great opposition to parking some elements of buses there because of diesel operations. And so for us, we are optimistic that once we move into more of an electrification type of process, sites that were previously explored may be able to come back in terms of possible opportunities and conversation points. But again, it is great to work alongside of you, because we absolutely want to move to a permanent location as much as you all want us to move off this site. So we are obviously in this together, moving forward.
Thank you, Seth, very much. Just a couple of reactions from myself. Firstly, it's great to know that DGS and MCPS are working together. From the community standpoint, that's very opaque. So to have both of you at this meeting is really much appreciated, and to continue to keep in touch about what's going on generally would be really, really helpful to the community, so we stay informed and know that there is dialogue going on, because again, it's quite opaque, if not just absent from a community perspective. Could you address, could one of you address if there is an MOU between the county and the Board of Education for the use of the land upon which the depot sits, including who's responsible for maintaining the property, both the property itself and the perimeter of the property? Is there such a document, and if so, where can we see it?
Jeff, there isn't a document. The county owns the land, as I think everyone is aware, and MCPS is our occupant. There's never been a lease agreement or an MOU. The arrangement, so to speak, dates back decades. Obviously predates Seth and I by decades, and really goes back to the origins of co-locating a number of industrial type uses at the terminus of the Red Line, where we had our old liquor warehouse, as well as our equipment maintenance and transportation depot, and all of the other uses that we relocated off of the west side of Crabs Branch. And so the only agreement that we've had historically was with the Parks Department when they had their facility on what is the other half of the east side. And there was an MOU in terms of them being there and who would take care of maintenance. But obviously they vacated a long time ago. And so nothing on paper, but I can tell you from a property maintenance perspective that DGS and MCPS are in close contact on a number of issues. We work collaboratively on a lot of different items, and keeping up the site, being under a lens and of hyper sensitivity to the community that is now well established on the west side, staring right at the bus depot. Seth and his team and the Board of Education are well aware that property maintenance is paramount. The county's temporary storage of ride-on buses that are off to the graveyard to be disposed of, their temporary storage, we put an end to that earlier this summer, so hopefully they're gone. I didn't check today, but hopefully that's been taken care of. But you know, we're out there regularly, and so if there are any other issues, whether it be tall grass or fencing or construction debris or dumping or any of those things, please let us know and we'll get on it. That's you know, obviously our obligation, and we're very sensitive to it.
Okay, thank you. I would propose that there should be an MOU now, given the expected fate of the land, per the Shady Grove Sector Plan, which has been approved by the council, as we all know. There is a plan for the east side, for what is on our agenda here as the Shady Grove Station, the Shady Grove Station east side, the Jeremiah Park redevelopment. That is a plan. Therefore, there should probably be an MOU between all the related agencies to guide the next steps toward the redevelopment of that land. I'm just putting it out there. That would make a lot of sense. And if that's something the county executives, you know, would do well to hear, you know, we're happy to oblige and make that formal recommendation. But let me stop talking and open it up for questions. If you have a question, just raise your hand. We all know the drill. We've been doing this for 2.5 years. And I'll just go through and look for hands. Carol, you want to go ahead? Thank you.
Yeah, getting back to Seth, the property that you're alluding to that had the community opposition because of diesel fumes, that was Carver Center, correct?
Well, actually, there's a couple sites in Rockville that were opposed to.
Oh, that's right. Another, I know another one was Winks, which actually kind of made no sense. But Carver, I drove by that this morning. I mean, it's a huge, totally open parking lot. So Is that going to go back on the table? Especially since the buses are going to be electric.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to get too far ahead of
Yeah,
Greg and DGS, but I would say, there were proposals, obviously, at the Carver Center. I think there's definitely also discussions of how to utilize that front space, but again, there's definitely parking opportunities, in that vicinity. We also proposed at one point which is the Blair Ewing Center, which is off of Norbeck Road 28, which is an underutilized facility that has direct access to major transit ways, is sort of tucked back. I know there were some environmental concerns with the diesel buses, but certainly, with an electrification type of process, that may also be an opportunity for further conversation. I'm certainly not here to say that these are going to be proposed. I'm just one entity here. I think it's important, from my perspective, just to note that as we do transition from diesel to electric buses, it does present opportunities. It does present different unique challenges, and it may present opportunities to revisit some previous sites that were precluded because of the diesel operation. So I know I probably overstepped a little bit, Greg, but that's
no. I think that's right, Seth, and Carol. As Seth mentioned, this has been going on for quite a while, and we made a lot of progress when MCPS and the Board of Education acknowledged that the depot doesn't necessarily need to be co-located with 450 parking spaces, and that we could find a depot site where they could operate, maintain, do their testing and qualifications, et cetera, in one site, but not necessarily park all of the buses in the same site. So to your question and to your point is absolutely, we would hope that with the electrification of both the county's fleet as well as MCPS's fleet, that a lot of the objections to various sites over the years for bus parking could be mitigated by the fact that we're no longer creating loud noise disturbances or fumes from diesel engines. So, in terms of finding additional places to park once we locate a depot somewhere, I would hope, and we certainly will ask the Board of Education to consider or reconsider all of those sites, because they are underutilized, and we still think they make an abundance of sense.
Thank you both. Joe Perello, he's a member of our committee. Joe, please go ahead, and then we're going to turn to Andrew Heinzman. Andrew, you'll be next. Thank you both.
I have a question here.
Joe, we got to speak up. We can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You hear me now? Okay, good. It's in referencing the electrification and more into the engineering behind it. What is the average for a school bus to actually travel miles per day? Any idea?
So I didn't quite catch all of that, but I think the question was how far can the electric buses travel in one day? Is that what the?
That is correct. Your average right now, currently.
Well,
Yes.
so we are beta testing every bus from a perspective of winter operation and summer operation, because it does change, it does impact the overall distance. But where we're landing right now is that the buses are able to transport students in some of our longest routes, existing routes, and some of our longest existing routes are sort of cross county for special education purposes and those sorts of things. So we are confident that they are adequate, and the distance is definitely adequate to serve the current routes and future routes. But the sort of the idea of locating, and I'll just float this out there, and in case you're headed in a direction of like, why not park them all over in closer to Frederick County or Prince George's County? The mileage then does create some challenges. The time, the operations create challenges with those types of functions too. So it is still important for us, because We do run, because we have the high school routes, the middle school routes, and the 2 tiers of the elementary routes, the buses are involved in picking up multiple students, and we coordinate and organize those routes within those communities to be able to serve, those individual clusters and various grade level students that have different start times and end times.
Now, what I was looking at is that because Shady Grove is centrally located, and be farming them out almost like a spider web, and actually shooting them out into different locations. It would be better to behoove us to actually have the bus depot being spread out into different schools, because that way your longevity of your mileage for your charge is actually reduced, and you don't have to have that travel time that you have to go out to the different areas. Because nationally, it's 73 miles per day a school bus will actually travel. That's quite a bit, and it's like per bus. So that's why I'm trying to ask you this question: why is it that we are not re-entertaining going into the different schools and parking them there? Of course, you're no longer going to have diesel, but it's also the longevity of the motor and for the useful life, because now you no longer have all the mechanicals behind it. All you have is a charge. So you really don't have that constant maintenance that you actually have with a vehicle, other than changing cars and the bus tires or the brakes or what have you. So it's very minimal then. And to entertain the idea, I mean, if you really believe that we're going to go that route, to me, I think as a business case, you need to put them onto the actual schools themselves so they have a shorter route.
The talker.
And just to reiterate, so we did mention that we are going to start the engineering and exploration to park school buses on school sites. But I would also reiterate what Greg had mentioned, is that it is critical for us to have a depot at some location, and that depot is important for a variety of reasons, including the 3 state inspections that are required and all the other elements that are associated with it. So the idea of transporting all buses, the entire fleet, to just a couple locations from a depot is not currently feasible from an operations standpoint. But yes, we are looking at a distributed parking model with the electrification of our buses.
Thank you, Seth. I want to just mindful of time. Let's turn to Andrew. Andrew, please go ahead with your question, and then we're going to go to Don Lutke.
Seth and Greg, thank you for your time. This should be a pretty quick question. This is more towards Greg. Was EYA's relationship on this site? I thought at one point in time they were maybe the first right of refusal or something along those lines, or they were actually supposed to develop both sides, and this was more the amenity side versus the development side on the west side.
Sure. So the arrangement, which dates back more than 10 years at this point, EYA was brought in to be the county's master developer for the project. And when I say the project, I mean both the east and west sides of Crabs Branch. What that entailed was to take both sides through the master plan process, the preliminary subdivision process, and then ultimately be our construction contractor to complete the infrastructure needed to facilitate a residential development on both sides. EYA had rights to develop the west side only, and did not have rights to develop the east side. At this point in time, EYA was our general contractor, and obviously you guys are familiar with the site. They rebuilt Crabs Branch Way. They relocated the fiber hub to the other end of the project. They've built internal infrastructure. They've relocated WSSC sewer lines under the WMATA property. They've constructed a path around and other hiker biker paths along Crabs Branch, Shady Grove, and some of the adjacent communities around the lake, and other various projects or pieces of projects that were associated and called for in the master plan. But EYA doesn't have any development rights, nor are they a partner on the development of the east side, which is Jeremiah Park. They did assist us in the preliminary plan approvals, which includes a school site, a park, as well as several hundred residential units, both townhouses and multifamily. And so that has been approved, but the piece of the puzzle here is that the county's not been able to relocate the bus depot and therefore hasn't picked up a partner to do the residential development and develop the east side.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Before we go to Dawn, Greg, I'd appreciate it if you could address the question of whether there are any relocation options being pursued along Goody Drive in that industrial area that we're all familiar with.
Yeah, and Jeff, thank you for asking that, because I didn't want to say it earlier because I wanted to make sure that we got into the Q&A. But you know, the obstacles that we're running into with the city of Rockville as it relates to the 7-Lock site are obstacles that we obviously anticipated. We've been working on this long enough. The county's been working on this long enough, and certainly DGS has been working on this long enough to know that we certainly don't put all of our eggs in one basket. And just because we are setting our sights on one in particular site for further study doesn't mean that we've given up and are, you know, not evaluating or considering other sites that may present themselves along the ways. And certainly, to I think Carol's point earlier, you know, revisiting sites that we may have already looked at, and the county's looked at over 100 sites over the last 10 years. We've plotted all of those on a map if you're interested in seeing where all of those sites are, but it's voluminous and they're all over the county. And certainly, given the shrinking amount of flex and industrial space in Montgomery County generally, the South Lawn Goody area has always been of particular interest to DGS and others who are responsible for locating less than desirable county infrastructure. And so absolutely, we're looking at Goody Drive, we're looking at South Lawn. We continue to look in the Air Park and a number of other locations in the corridor, the Rockville-Gaithersburg corridor. So haven't given up on anything, and we'll continue to identify sites should the 7-Locks one not work out.
Thanks, Greg, very much. Just an addendum to that. I appreciate the way you frame that, which is extremely realistic, obviously. You know, one of the things that I'd like to see the county do is frame it a little bit the opposite way, whereas the county has this plan for the Shady Grove sector, which is intended to yield more housing a quarter mile near Metro, a park, potentially a school, other amenities. And the aim should be to achieve the plan, while the aim is also to relocate the bus depot. And I understand, you know, what all the issues are, as you do as well. It's desirable because it's a key part of MCPS infrastructure. That's not lost on us. But what is, you know, integral for this community is achievement of the actual approved plan for the redevelopment of land. So it's two sides of the same coin. But anyway, Dawn Lutke, over to you, and then we'll go to Mike Leventhal. If Mike, you wish still to ask a question. Dawn, please go ahead.
Hi, I think these are more clarification questions than anything else, but I want to go back to, you mentioned, first you mentioned that there were state inspections that were required, and then you said there were other state requirements. So in answering someone else's question, you did state that there were 3 state inspections required annually for those buses. I'm assuming that those are not all done simultaneously, correct? Like there's no need to do the entire fleet at one time?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
You know, but in terms of just how the operations work, our summertime months obviously are very critical to us when we're able to do a bulk of this work. You know, one of the other options that we talked about is redundancy in the fleet. Currently, we don't have great redundancy in the fleet, and what I mean by that is that we can't take many of our buses out of service in order to do different things. So even elements such as if bus drivers call out, you know, we currently, with the depot centralized structure, we have supervisors that will jump in and drive those routes. When we start thinking about distributed models, inspections, those sorts of things, we are going to also have to talk about increasing our fleet in order to offset some of those operational elements. So it is a good question. Like, do they all have to happen at the same time? No, but in order for them not to happen during summer months, we would definitely have to look at our overall fleet and see how we can create a level of redundancy for that.
So do you have any documents that would demonstrate how you currently schedule all the buses for their inspections for the 3 times a year that they have to occur? You just mentioned that they can't all occur during the summer, but can't all they summertime is a big time for you. Sorry, backtracking. But if you aren't able to do them all in the summer and you have to do inspections 3 different times per year, is that 3 different times per year per vehicle? Or are there currently 3 blocks during the year during which you schedule them? For example, summer break, winter break, spring break. Could you clarify?
Blocks. Yes, it's blocks, and I believe, and I am not the bus operations expert on this, but from my understanding is that it's 2 major state inspections, and those are more safety inspections. And then we also have an element of a maintenance requirement that is in place, and that's more around diesel buses, but we are also working with the vendor to understand what sort of that annual maintenance check would be for electric vehicles as well.
So right now, like, it's not clear to you whether for an electric vehicle, you have to pull up at like an emissions kind of thing, like we all do with our personal vehicles, where you have to go to a physical site that has specific equipment that is required in order to do the inspection, or whether there is a generalized safety inspection that could be done on site if those buses are relocated to the school's properties. Is that right?
It's right, and it's both. So there is an element that's very much structured to the electric fleet, and that's part of the installation work that the vendor is doing. But there's also general safety that's involved in any bus, regardless if it's
Sure.
electric.
Absolutely. But those would not be connected to specific equipment or emissions types equipment. Is that right?
No, not emissions, but you know, even our electric infrastructure that's going in, you know, we're working with the vendor in terms of what the maintenance, because we obviously have to change some of the maintenance components and equipment at our depots in order to accommodate. So, you know, again, these are, you know, these are great questions, and I think this is going to be the crux of our CIP discussions this fall in terms of what changes in both operation and infrastructure is required to go to more of a distributed model. I'm not here to say that you can't do it. I'm here to say that there are elements that are going to involve both infrastructure cost as well as operational changes from a systems standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you again for joining this evening with respect of your time. Mike Leventhal, let's go to you, and then we'll go to Alfred Minichello. And then we're going to conclude this part of our meeting just with respect of everybody's time. So, Mike, please go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff. So I don't know if anyone will be able to answer this question, but you know, my question is there anything that can be done procedurally to prevent Rockville from continuously vetoing these plans? Because we've seemed to go through this song and dance every few years where a perfectly reasonable plan is put forth that mitigates as much adverse effects as possible to the new community, and a very vocal minority seems to throw a monkey wrench into it, and then we're back to square one. I'm just wondering if this is a county decision, why is Rockville continuously able to prevent us from moving forward on this project?
It's a good question, and I need to be careful about how I answer, because I want to stay in my lane in terms of because you're asking kind of a legal question. What is the county's ability to move forward with this particular site at Seven Locks, with or without the city's consent? And that gets us into an arena where I don't want to dip my toe this evening, but the long and short of it is we are MCPS and the county, as well as the municipalities, we all have an interest in making sure that we have the infrastructure needed to provide services for school buses, ride-on buses, and all of the other transportation needs this county has. And so we are all vested, and it is our hope, and we work in this vein, that we are all working towards the same effort and to the same end. And we, again, I've not received the county executive's reaction to the city's recent position on this particular matter. But I am certain that there will be discussion between the county and the city to explore just exactly and dive a little bit deeper into what their concerns are, whether it be this site, another site, or a half dozen other sites that we've proposed that happen to be within the corporate boundaries of the city of Rockville, or the city of Gaithersburg, or the city of Tacoma Park. I don't want to just hold Rockville alone, but we want to work collaboratively with our partners. And as I said, we all have a vested interest, and we confront these issues, these infrastructure issues in that frame. And we hope that our partners do the same. But that's about as far as I can go on the matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for your question. And I added in the chat there the aspect of Rockville's future annexation plans, and that's something that this committee needs to take up in due course, and we will. Alfred, let's go to you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your time and what has been said already, and wanted to reinforce what was mentioned about the master plan being all of our plan. It's not, as was one point mentioned by the county executive, saying it was your plan out there to the public, as if it wasn't his as well. And I appreciate, Mr. Hassan, you're saying that we're all working together on this to achieve the various goals that each has. To take a carrot and stick approach to what I lead up to my particular concrete question, we have properties on the west side that are losing value because of amenities and circumstances in the environment that have, unfortunately, as I understand it, have already driven away owners and also are keeping at bay retail potential. That's the stick aspect. There's a negative there. And on the positive side, the carrot, we have so much of an opportunity to realize what's already in the plan and coincidentally realize improvements to realize Vision Zero, improvements to realize green buildings, and perhaps part of green buildings and the Montgomery County Public Schools wanting to be on board with green. Perhaps electric buses should be a requirement. As we get greener. I keep hearing that there's so much of a thrust for being electric by a certain calendar date, but I don't see how that's going to happen when things on the CIPs don't bear that out. So I'll stop generalizing and I'll ask a concrete question. How can we be reassured in the short run that concrete CIP dollars are going to be devoted towards analyzing how can we incrementally put those buses in 10 different schools, those electric buses, how can we start to move the buses out incrementally while we also deal with the NIMBYs that don't want the main maintenance that will be left over, the main maintenance structure or the depot that remains after electrification. I ask this if this without knowledge of CIPs, but I want to encourage that kind of detail because I feel like, to use a word that's described this area, it's languished for 20 years or so. Languished is the word I heard used. And people will be genuinely enthused if we can see dollars, time, and options. If we see buses being deployed in the high schools or the middle schools, or studies paying for that analysis to see that that's going to happen. But if we see something that says there are $0 in the CIP for 6 years, we know nothing's going to happen for 6 years. And I don't think that politically is going to be acceptable anymore. So I'll stop there and beg your pardon if I've been a little emotional.
Alfred, thank you very much. Seth or Greg, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Seth alluded to it earlier, and I think it's something that we need to reiterate is that given both MCPS and the county's efforts to electrify or electrification of the county and MCPS's bus fleets, we're continuing to roll that out. As we roll out the ride-on and DOT buses as well as the MCPS school buses, there's a lot of infrastructure needs, and we're continuing to work and collaborate on those. The CIP currently shows no funding beyond 6 years for the school bus depot at 7 Locks. I think Seth mentioned it earlier. We do need a depot for MCPS. There's no doubt about that. And 7 Locks was proposed or is proposed to be that depot. But we could only park or fit about 200 to 225 buses, which leaves a balance of about 225 to 250 buses to find other locations. And so it was our intent that once we established where the depot would go, that the county and MCPS would continue to collaborate on how we decentralize the parking as we learn more about the headways, the electrification, how far we're able to go, how the routes will run, and doing so in collaboration with our own facilities that are charging the ride-on buses, et cetera. So we're kind of doing the same exercise between two agencies, but also recognize that we could also co-locate and partner on these different locations and not have to have one centralized depot with parking for 450 school buses or 450 ride-on buses and et cetera. So all that to say this, which is we certainly hear you loud and clear, and I think we would tend to agree that we want to work towards the infrastructure piece of this, and that as part of that, there's an acknowledgement that given electrification, that we're going to be in different locations, whether that be at high schools or whether that be at other locations, that we're going to need to decentralize the actual mass parking of buses the way that you see it on Crabs Branch today.
Thank you, Greg. And Alfred, thank you again for your feedback and your thoughts. Always appreciated. It's always a pleasure to be in touch with you over email. Shobhana Sharma, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Seth, for the valuable information that you've presented. I live in the beautiful West Side development on Shady Grove Road, EYA community, and our home is basically parallel to the bus depot. I see it every day, whether I want to or not. And it's definitely in a very dilapidated condition. At one time, there was nice black silt fence covering the fence. Most of that is down. You know, the school bus yard, which is supposed to be locked, is many times left unlocked. People are coming in and out of there at all times. And at a minimum, since it's going to be there for some time, I would suggest that maybe some trees get planted, you know, some better shrubs to cover up some of the buildings, which are just really ugly. And it's a shame that we have such a nice development on the west side and we look at everything on the east side. So at a minimum, some plantings, some trees, you know, to make it look better. I think that would go a long way. So those are just my 2 cents on that. Thanks for listening.
And I don't know if you'd like me to comment, but I would say that it would be great though if there's an opportunity to create a smaller work group that I can work with you all to see what makes sense. I mean, I think, you know, a facility like we're talking about where you know, we obviously from an MCPS perspective have been through a roller coaster of be prepared to leave, nope, not going, those types of things that sort of some of that investment has been discouraged. But you know, if there's things that we can do to help the appearance, that's not a significant cost, you know, but that would add value. I'd love to explore those with you all and see what the options may present themselves.
Yes,
And
that's
we'll DGS the county will piggyback on Seth's offer. Obviously, MCPS is responsible for maintenance of the depot side of things, but the county is still the owner of the what used to be the park side and half of the site, and are continuously out there maintaining that. So we'd be happy to participate in that smaller work group. And if there are specific suggestions, we'll certainly allot some staff to walk the site with the community and collaborate with MCPS on the solutions.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. We could take a small tour and, you
Sure.
know, landscaping can be done pretty economically these days. It could be, you know, county beautification project or whatever. But I think that would definitely be a good idea because, you know, if you come to the west side, it's really beautiful over here. And we want that same for the east side, of course. So thanks for your time.
Certainly.
Can I add on?
Sure.
To
Yeah,
this?
go ahead, Carol. Carol, before you do, let me say, so I'm remiss in kind of making this a shorter session. So if anyone is particularly upset that we're continuing on this very important topic, just you can put it in the chat, but let's do proceed with respect to Seth's and Greg's time, because I do see that several people have texted me, said, can you keep going? Because this is a very important issue. So Carol, go ahead. Shobana, thank you very much. And I think the follow-on to get a small group together, Shobana, with respect.
That's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, it's a fabulous idea. And if I can somehow facilitate that, although I don't live on the west side, I live in the Park Overlook community, I can facilitate in any way, but otherwise I'll get out of the way. So Carol, go ahead.
Besides the landscaping that the facility desperately needs, DGS really needs to do something about the large number of cars that are using what was the park facility part of the property as a parking lot. I mean, it's getting a little crazy. I mean, if you can fence that area off to keep people from parking, it's going to get even worse, I think, when CVS moves in.
So, Carol, the background on those that abundant parking that hasn't been there this entire time, it's related to the construction on the west side. So
it's not just related to the construction, because the cars are there after the construction workers have left.
Okay, all right.
A large number of cars.
We can take a look at that then.
Yeah, definitely
Yep.
take a look at that.
Certainly. Yep.
Okay. Shobana, did you have another question? Your hand's still up.
No, let me put that down. Sorry.
Okay. Joe, back to you. Another question?
Oh, I think he just didn't get his hand down.
Oh, okay. All right. Joe, you're muted, Joe.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay,
Yep, go ahead.
Has the county looked at the power grid and having 450 buses being charged at the same time in one location be a catastrophe, I would think. So by force, you're going to have to split this up into different numbers in different locations, because I really don't think you have the power grid to actually do that. Have they looked at it? Has anyone looked at it?
Yes, I know, Pepco and the bus electric bus companies are working through those engineering elements as we speak. So that is, infrastructure does go beyond just buses and roads and those sorts of things. It's definitely the grid, and we've had many conversations with our partners at Pepco and other energy providers around, even as we go more green in a lot of elements, what does that mean from an infrastructure standpoint? But that's a great question, and certainly I can try to track down any information they may have and have gathered through their analysis.
Because the fashion now is everybody's getting an electric car. So when you start having quite a few cars in a neighborhood that and then all of a sudden you plop the electric buses also in the mix, it gets very challenging. I mean, our electric grid, I really doubt that we're going to have the capability. I mean, that has to foremost has to be looked at.
Joe, it gives me a good opportunity. Your comment gives me a good opportunity to plug another DGS project. If you go to our homepage, Department of General Services, Office of Energy and Sustainability, which is one of the divisions that falls under my portfolio. We are currently constructing a microgrid down in Littonsville at the Brookville Depot to power and self-sustain up to 75 electric buses for the fleet down there. So it's a combination of solar as well as battery storage to not rely on the Pepco grid and to self-generate power and then store it to charge the buses. And there's a lot of information on our website there if you're interested in those types of things and kind of the efforts that were underway. And we're actually moving from Brookville, which is going to complete construction, and we'll do a ribbon cutting this fall. And we're going to parlay that effort into a secondary effort at the MTOC facility, which is there in your neighborhood, where our current facility is there on Crabs Branch on the other side, to turn that into a microgrid as well. And we're actually considering a hydrogen use as well. So lots of interesting things along your line of questions. And yeah, I can send you some links if you're not able to find them. Just give me an email and I'll send you all the information that we have.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
You bet. Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. Yeah.
We have Andrew, you raised your hand if you want to go ahead. And then we have two questions in the chat by two community members. Andrew, please go ahead.
No question. Sorry. Go to the chat.
Not at all. Thank you. No problem. A question from Niazi Zoha. Now that we have some vacant land with ride-on buses being gone on the east side, is there any part of the master plan or the preliminary plan that could be looked to be developed? So this is the former parks area. This is adjacent to the parking area that we discussed 10 minutes ago. That public land laying fallow. Greg, could you address this?
Yeah, one of the theoretically we could get something underway there. One of the main obstacles, however, is the environmental cleanup that needs to happen. Both the east side and the west side were industrial sites, and so the Maryland Department of Environment requires an MDE cleanup of the sites before we're able to develop it. We spent a number of years and millions of dollars cleaning up the west side, and I see that Adam's on the call, and he'll recall his efforts and the county dollars going towards cleaning up the west side, and some of those efforts are still underway. We would need to do the same on the east side. And so it probably, and I won't say this definitively, I'll just say probably doesn't make sense to do piecemeal development on the east side, because the extent of the environmental cleanup would likely cover the entire site. And so in other words, in order to develop that, just what is the vacant site where the Parks building used to be, probably is predicated on cleaning up where MCPS currently is, getting all of the soils, the contaminated soils addressed, and underground storage tanks addressed, and all of the other industrial type uses and contaminations that are currently in the area. But that's just my sense. It doesn't, it's not an absolute no, and it's something that we'll continue to look at if that's a desire. But we haven't considered piecemeal development to date for that reason, and that's likely the response for the foreseeable future.
Thanks, Greg. And Habibi Paiman, I'm going to get to your question in a moment, but I want to ask a follow-on to Greg. Greg, at this moment, have any county dollars been formally budgeted to remediate the east side as needed?
Yeah, I do believe that we have, and I'll double check, Jeff, because I want to be accurate. I'll double check with our team, but I do believe that the CIP project for the county service park, generally, we did encumber some funds to do environmental testing, as well as some of the preliminary paperwork and administrative requirements that MDE requires. But I'll need to follow up with you on that.
Thank you. Habibi Paiman asks, what comes first, electric buses or a new facility to charge them?
So I'll let Seth talk about the MCPS plans for electric buses, but from the county's perspective, we're heavily focused on infrastructure. That's something that the Department of General Services is paramount in terms of supporting our client and user departments like DOT. So before they brought on and signed a contract to receive a bunch of electric ride-on buses for their fleet, they worked with us to make sure that we were actually able to charge them when they arrived. And we work collaboratively on that effort. As I mentioned, the Brookville Depot is our first example of an electrified fleet. We have 4 buses on site that are currently being charged down there. We'll be capable of charging up to 70 or 75 by this fall, and that will exceed the number of electric buses that we actually have down there. But ultimately, we have more orders coming in as the older buses are phased out. But the short answer is yes, you got to have a place to charge the buses, because otherwise they just sit there and they embarrass you.
Thank you, Greg. So before we get to Don, I was remiss. Shobana Sharma asks just a clarifying question. So the dollars are for assessment, not for cleanup and remediation, phase 1 only. Can you dig a little deeper on that? Pardon.
Yeah, I'll have to check, Jeff. I'm not sure if we've got dollars devoted to the actual remediation. I know I'll have to check and follow up with you. I'm pretty sure we have a statement of requirements from MDE as to what needs to be done and what we need to achieve. I'll have to see if we have the dollars devoted to it, and go from there. A follow up.
Thanks.
That'll be a follow up item for DGS.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So Don Litke, excuse me, Don, back to you.
Yeah, sorry, before I ask the question, I wanted to ask, is it possible to get the statement of requirements from MDE as to what is required so that we would anticipate how long it may take? And a secondary question to that is, have you sought any state dollars for doing that remediation work, or is that intended to be solely funded by the county?
So I can, to answer your first question, yes, there is absolutely lots of documentation from the state as to what the county is required to do to get a no further need letter from MDE, and that's what we achieved on the west side. And then to answer your second question about state dollars, et cetera, we did seek assistance for the west side cleanup. I did that probably about 10 years ago. We were unsuccessful. And in large part, there are a lot of really important projects and a lot of extensive cleanup efforts statewide, and the resources for state participation in those cleanups is fairly limited. So we weren't able to get any assistance at that time, but that was several years ago. We would certainly explore that. Our Office of Management and Budget, pushes those buttons on a regular basis. But we would plan to. It would be a county cost, and we would need to program that, whether or not we get state assistance or not.
So I guess to make it clearer what I was asking, I know MDE's given you a statement of requirements. My question is, what has the county done and what have you developed as a plan for operationalizing that?
Oh, yeah. Premature, because we're not ready to roll on the east side cleanup yet. And as I mentioned, we'll need to check and see whether we're even resourced to do those planning activities. But I'll have to follow up because, again, this is a little bit more detailed than I have
Sure.
right off the top of my head, and I'll check with our team on the environmental piece of this, and I'm not going to drag Adam into it tonight, because I know that he probably knows part of the answer, but not all of it, and it's better to hear it from the county because we're the owner.
Yeah.
So we'll follow up on that information.
No worries. I just thought that would be something that would probably be helpful for everyone to see, so that everyone sort of knows what it's going to take, what, and parallel to that, the other piece of it being, when I asked the questions earlier about the fleet maintenance and what that takes, and again, the operational is I struggle with that word, sorry. But you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So do you have, or can you provide, and can this group have what it would look like over a 36-month span, right? Over a 3-year trajectory of status quo as is, and this is how it's going to work. And to see where you could put in, whether it's swim lanes, whatever you want to do to visualize what it's going to take to make that change and how it could be done progressively over a 3-year plan. If money were no object and other obstacles were not in your way, what could you do to get that done?
Yeah, we could probably come up with a sequential events that would be necessary in order to do that. Of course, the first piece of that is the critical path item is establishing another depot somewhere else. But the actual cleanup of the site, that's a fairly straightforward. And my recollection is the environmental cleanup on the east side wasn't nearly as extensive as what was required on the west side. But I'll confirm that and pass that information along to the committee.
Great, thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, so I think that's all the questions. I don't see any more hands. So with that, gentlemen, Greg and Seth, thank you both very, very much. Please hang around if you wish, but we'd like to extend an invitation for both of you to come back to one of our committee meetings, whether the next one or the following. I'll work with the committee accordingly, but if you'd be willing to oblige us, we'd be grateful, because this has been a great dialogue. Very grateful for your time, your expertise, and certainly the collaboration, the spirit of collaboration that is really going to be needed to kind of, get all this done, as you both know far better than I do. But we're very grateful for the open dialogue and your participation and engagement. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. We're happy to be there. I'll speak for Seth on this one. We're happy to come and participate. And again, I can't stress enough. Seth mentioned this earlier. All of this helps us inform our conversations that we have with the county executive and the superintendent for MCPS as part of the CIP process. We begin these discussions now, and they move into the fall. And so it's really important that we stay engaged and understand what the requests are and those types of things. So as it relates to just something as, and I won't call it simple because it's probably really important to the community, but something like exterior property maintenance that we can address in the near term. Obviously, a lot of these issues are more long-term and CIP matters. And so to the extent that we can participate in the dialogue and inform the administrations as it relates to our CIP discussions, it's super helpful for both Seth and I to be able to relay this information back to the executive, his team, as well as the superintendent, I would imagine. So thank you for the dialogue.
Absolutely. Thank you both again, very, very much. We're going to proceed on our agenda here. We're at 8:47, obviously, but we're going to continue for a brief project update on the Shady Grove Station West Side. And Nkosi, could we turn to you for, or perhaps in combination with Shobana, how do we want to approach this particular topic with respect of kind of what we discussed over email?
Yeah.
Actually, we
better
have-
if you talk to Adam and let him run with it.
Okay, great. I'm a little foggy at the moment. I'm not feeling well. So Adam and Shobana, Adam provided an update on the Shady Grove West Side development. So Adam, let me turn it over to you. And thanks again for your time.
You bet. And to Seth and Greg, I think they may have jumped already, but it was good to see them. Nkosi, hello. My name's Adam Hayes. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for EYA. I'm also the president of the Homeowners Association at Westside at Shady Grove. Wear a couple of hats there. I've been with EYA for 15 years, so I have been part of the Shady Grove master plan and preliminary plan process that Greg mentioned earlier, along with Nkosi. I had darker hair then. It's a little bit grayer. My kids are now headed off to college, but it's been a long process that has been very rewarding, and it's great to see the development of the community on the west side. So I really do appreciate the engagement and the opportunity to talk tonight and give you all an update. I did provide everything in writing that I will mention today. And these are the types of things that we also provide at our homeowners association, an update on what's going on. So if you're okay, I'll share my screen that just has a site plan that will help with the dialogue here, or help support the dialogue. So hopefully you'll be able to see that okay. Is that coming through okay for everybody, that plan? Jeff, can you see that all right?
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah, it looks good to me. I'll just say that if people use their control and rollerball on their mouse, they can zoom in on what you're showing, if that's helpful to people. But yes, I can see it. Go right ahead.
Okay, so right now, the current we're primarily complete with most land development activity out there. From a building construction standpoint, multifamily building A, also known as the Daily, which is in the upper right corner here, was the first multifamily building that we constructed and that was occupied in the community. The commercial spaces have been fully leased and are currently going through a couple other tenant changes. There is a new tenant that's coming into the space in the Daily that fronts on Gramercy Boulevard, which is a Pearl Vision. I believe they're starting the current build out of that space. I'm not sure what they're projecting their opening date to be, but Pearl Vision will be coming to that space. The second multifamily building, which we refer to as Building D, is now known as the Laureate. It is owned by the Housing Opportunities Commission. The construction is substantially on schedule. The first residential dwelling occupancy, which does include the amenity space, is anticipated for January 2023, and the substantial completion date with our contractors, it should be sometime in February 24, in late February of 2023, with the final completion of all work in April. We expect the first retail spaces to deliver to the tenants in October of this year. There's a total of 6 retail tenants expected. The anchor tenant, as was mentioned earlier, is CVS, which is located at the corner of Gramercy and Crabs Branch Way. We're under negotiations with a boutique fitness company right now for the other space, as well as a urgent care provider. And then we continually actively market the remaining spaces, and we do hope to officially announce that fitness company and urgent care provider soon, probably by the next time we have our homeowners association meeting later this fall. What we call the Phase 1 Townhouse community, which is the area in green here, is the area that was developed and built by EYA, the home building side of our company. What we also refer to as Phase 2 and 3 of the townhouse project is currently being built by Lennar and Stanley Martin. The clubhouse and pool area is completed. Both dog parks are completed. And most of the small amenity spaces that are adjacent to the existing townhomes that have been occupied are substantially complete, if not completed. And the remaining small spaces will be delivered as the community continues to get built out. The of development right now is the Block S area. And for those folks that know it, that was the area where the existing sales center was located, fronting Crabs Branch Way. That is the sort of the next block that Lennar will be working in once we get the alleys paved and the infrastructure in place for them. We do have a little bit more work to do in the Block R area and Block T area, but it's very minimal. So I would expect sort of our EYA's land development activity as the master developer here to kind of slow down a little bit towards the end of this year, with the predominant construction activity being vertical construction on the townhouse side. The next development of the multifamily building B, which you see down here in the bottom right-hand corner. This is a multifamily building that is right now slated to contain about 413 units total. And it does have on the frontage, while it doesn't have, it has a space that's about 7,000 square feet that is set up to be reserved for a library or some sort of library space. But if that is not something that is desirable by the county, then it can become a temporary retail leased space as well. And that's located right at this intersection of Columbus Avenue and Gramercy. From a timing standpoint with the multifamily building, we're looking at starting, design of that effort once the Laureate completes its full development. The other area of future development is located on the far left side. As Nkosi knows, this is a corner that we have studied quite a bit. We've come to him with a few preliminary plan and site plan amendments over the years to try to pursue. Initially it was set up for office space. Then we looked at commercial, neighborhood grocery store space, like an Aldi size or one of the other ones, and we just couldn't make things work there. We have looked at larger play and care facilities for children that might go in there, and we can continue to even look at it for the potential for additional residential. So that it's still not a fully developed plan for this small area here. And once it is, one of the things that will deliver to the community is this community garden area that's located at the terminus of Columbus Avenue here. So that will deliver when that corner gets completed. As far as the development schedule with Stanley Martin, Stanley Martin has a total of 80 townhouses and 100 2-over-2 condominium units, and those are the units that are shown in blue down below in this plan, which front or which back up to the sound wall here. It was nice to hear from them that they have sold and settled all of their townhouses. I think at our last West Side meeting, they hadn't quite settled all of them, but it was nice to know that they have now done that with all 80 of their townhouse units. They have settled 83 of the 100 condominium units there, and they have the total sold of 96. So they're very close to selling out the remaining units and building those out. They should be done, selling those out by the end of the year. And, I don't know that they'll settle them out by the end of the year, but it's going to be close. Lennar Homes is the area in the red area here. And on this end of the site, Lennar Homes has a total of 178 townhouse units under contract in these phases. And as of the date that I put this memo together that I sent over to Shobana was that they had sold a total of 71 units and settled a total of 40. And they continue to push their efforts out there to continue to generate sales. Obviously, things like the development, news regarding the development on the east side of Crabs Branch Way are exciting for future home buyers out there, and the amenities that will come to the neighborhood overall in that area. That a lot of you have been looking forward to for a long time. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the development or timing of things. And if there's anything that I can't answer, I'm happy to get back to this group as well.
Hey, Adam, on the future development area near Shady Grove, has there ever been any talk to do a park or, some type of recreational area over there? Because, we're running out of green space. So that might be something nice if you can't, do retail or, something like that, instead of more homes to put green space over there.
Yeah, it's possible. We had always anticipated a community garden there. And, we all have thought that based on the size of this community that, maybe there's some, revision to that concept of a community garden that may lend itself to a higher use potentially. But it really depends on the, what we can do there. It is important for that part of the site to generate, some income for the county. I mean, it's currently owned by Montgomery County still. So EYA doesn't own that piece.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, we have taken down the property in phases. So that was part of the, the deal that Greg was talking about early on that happened back, 14 years ago, I think, really with the land swap that occurred where the county has the facilities on the other side of Shady Grove. That was land actually that EYA had control of at one time. So sort of a land swap that happened, many years ago that allowed for this development to occur. So there is income that needs to be generated by that land parcel, and we're working with the county and with DGS to try to find out that best use for that property.
if I may just have a quick follow-up, one of the things that I heard from one of the retailers, in the Daly area was that part of the holdup in getting retail partners was no parking. I mean, if you go to where the Daly is and now where the Laureate is, there's no parking there. So, a retailer that's going to go in there, I would think would be very careful, or maybe may not want to go in there because there's no parking spaces. I mean, is that a consideration at all? I mean, have you heard that?
I've not heard that parking is an issue from the retailers. I haven't myself.
Mhm.
There is a lot more parking provided to visitors within the parking garages than people are aware of. There were some additional signage that I think recently got, that I know as a board, as the president, that I approved for for Gramercy and around Columbus and around the circle to help direct visitors to that parking. And I know that is something that the multifamily property owner of the Daily does want to continue to make sure that visitors are aware of, that it's not just what you see on Gramercy. There's more to it. It's not quite as convenient, right, as stepping out of your car and walking straight in, but there is more parking there.
Hey, Adam, this is Karen Garfield. I work with Adam at EYA. And for the new building under construction, the Laureate, it's actually going to have 116 dedicated retail parking spaces.
Oh,
Excellent.
great.
Karen,
Where
thank
will
you.
those be?
Those will be on the ground level of the first level of the parking garage that sits along, I guess the entrance is off of Connors, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. We walk by that all the time.
I'm sorry, not Columbus.
Columbus.
I'm sorry, Columbus.
Well, that would be good to know. And I think, that the problem is maybe people don't know that. But, like I said, I did talk with one of the retailers that's in the Daily. And, from what he heard, that's what he expressed to me, that, there was no parking lots, no place for anybody to park in front of a retail organization. So folks were hesitant. So, which I can understand. I mean, even if you go to Old Town Rockville, to the grocery store that used to be there, if there was no parking spaces there, who'd want to go there? So anyway, thank you.
Joe, but I see Joe's hand. I just want to make sure he has the opportunity to ask a question. And then Ally C just raised her hand. Just, excuse me.
Yep, all yours.
Joe, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question here about the ceremonial circle that you have on Columbus Avenue there. Usually a circle is for a sense of place. And is there anything there that's going to go into the center that actually have a sense of place for Durwood or the area?
Yeah, I'll have to look again. I know that what we initially installed in that circle was primarily just landscaping. And part of that was because of the amount of construction activity that was still happening in the area. We were getting, some large trucks through there that, can, continuously seem to drive straight over a good portion of that circle. So I'll take a look. I know we did have some landscape and hardscape planned within that circle. I can see whether or not that's currently installed to its ultimate condition or not.
The reason why I asked is because I actually know a lot about the history of Durwood. And Old Durwood's right across the street from you all, across Redland Road. And there's also a Revolutionary War general buried there, General Crabb, hence the word Crabb's Branch. You'll actually see a marker. It's on 355. I think it's across from Lexus or something like that. You'll actually see a marker there, historic marker. And there's also Ricketts Run, which was a Civil War skirmish in the area. It would be nice to actually celebrate what happened here in this area and what Durwood's about. Because without yeah, basically you are in Durwood. And it would be nice to have a ceremonial thing that has a sense of place that means something instead of just putting something there. Just I'm throwing that out. I have an architectural background and also urban planning background. And I just find that, there should be something given back to the community also, not just take. So, and the people that are living, even the new people in the area, they really don't know the history of Durwood. I live in Old Durwood. I live in the old community of Durwood, 1880 home. So it's like, without Old Durwood, Durwood's name.
I think we lost you, Joe.
I think we lost Joe. Oh, you're back.
Am I back?
Yes,
Okay.
you were in the middle of saying without Old Durwood.
You really don't have Durwood. The
Right.
actual, the 20855. It's there's a name there, and I think you need to have a little bit of history possibly. I'm not saying having a general on a horse. I'm talking about maybe plaques, maybe some. There was also the old Durwood railroad station that was burned. It looked exactly like the one in Gaithersburg. We have photographs. There are archives of this. I'm just saying people don't know what they don't know. And it's kind of interesting that, it's in a way reminiscent of the teaching people. Just an idea. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I appreciate those comments.
Allie C., you've got your hand up. Please go ahead.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm a new buyer here. My family and I have been over here in Lennar for a little over 30 days. And I'm just wanted to put it out there, after, just about 30 days of meeting these amazing neighbors here at the West Side, I think that we could all agree, moving from, we were 5 years at the Crown West, living there, and we just had such a wonderful walkability, lots of things to do with our families and, choices for dining. And, I just think that it would be wonderful. And I think the neighborhood could agree, at least the neighbors that I've come across so far, that it would just be, it would be really beneficial to have a lot more walkability to places where we could congregate as a community. So I just wanted to throw it out there as a new resident home buyer at the West Side.
Thank you, Allie. I'm going to go a step further and say that those sentiments are shared very much by the Park Overlook community. Not really my place to talk on behalf of my community, but this is something that Park Overlook talks about frequently, along with adjacent Mallard Cove community. And meeting spaces of all kinds are always very important. And I hear you very clearly myself, and share that thought very much, as do many people in Park Overlook. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And welcome to the community. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Really.
Welcome to Shady Grove General.
Thank you.
Welcome. Adam, anything else from your perspective that you wish to share?
I don't think so. I did, want to recognize Karen, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you earlier. Karen Garfield with EYA is our Vice President of Multifamily Development, and she's been working closely on the Shady Grove multifamily on the Laureate itself, and will continue to be heading up the development and vision for the future building B. And we have heard over the years how important, and we know this as a developer, how important neighborhood serving retail is, and how we want to see that vision come through, not just here on the east side, but also on the west side. Some of the I'm sorry, on the west side, not just so. We want to see that go forward on the east side. Some of what supports the retail, the really quality retail tenants coming in, are going to be rooftops, not just on the west side, but also the east side. So this committee is doing great work, and we appreciate it because it's it's going to be a grassroots effort. It's a tough problem to solve for the county on the east side over there, and we'll continue to support you guys. I'll come to more meetings as well because I do appreciate the dialogue and happy to give continued updates as I know them.
Hey, Adam. Adam, did anybody ever think about buying the strip mall where the Giant is and putting the school buses across from where the fleet maintenance facility is? Then all the buses are on one side of the road? Was that ever a consideration at all? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I'm not aware of whether or not they did pursue that, whether the county did pursue that. I think you'd have to look at the there that are in the master plan. I think the idea was that really was for future development of that property. I don't know if Nkosi, if you're aware of any other development applications or anything going in for that area at the corner of Crabs Branch and Shady Grove on the north side over there. But
the Grove Shopping Center.
Yes, the Grove Shopping Center. Wouldn't that be a good place for the buses?
Yeah, the county would have to buy the property or buy a portion of it to do that. So and obviously given the financial challenges they've had, obviously trying to find sites to relocate the school buses. I don't think that that one was looked at. But in terms of any new development, no, we haven't had any new conversations or applications with the Casey Trust that owns that site.
But Nkosi, you had something, about 7 or 8 years ago. I do recall that there was something that was put on the table.
Yeah, maybe we had a conversation, but nothing of consequence regarding any new plans to make any substantial changes to the property.
Okay.
So I see two hands up. Emily Z, you want to go ahead, and then we'll go back to Allie. Emily, go ahead.
Oh, sure. So this is Waitrao. I'm using my wife's account here. So I just have a quick question regarding the transfer station nearby. So I'm not sure if any of the neighbors smell it, because we did smell it like 2 weeks ago. We smell like rotten smell coming from the transfer station. So, and then I was just curious if like any of you have experienced this before, because we moved in here like since last year June, and then we didn't notice it until like 2-3 weeks ago. So, and then I also did send a complaint to the transfer station, and then I sent an email, and then they did reply to me. So a manager called David Rosenbaum from transfer station, he's a program manager too there. He said he's investigating that. Yeah, so just wanted to ask that question here.
So your question is, has anyone else experienced?
Yeah,
sorry.
Right. Because I live on Bowery Street, and then like 2 weeks ago I was on my rooftop terrace, and then I did smell some rotten smell coming from the transfer station. It's one of the smells that when you smell it, you know it. So
I agree. I've been here since 1996. I've smelled it every year.
Gotcha. So
it's
like
been around for a long time. It just depends on when it rains and the heat and the humidity and all that, and where the wind blows.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I do notice that like whenever it blows the southwest wind, like it's obvious. I mean sometimes it's like I could smell just a little bit. So
yeah, I remember when we were actually developing this back about 22 years ago, and this came up numerous times because that smell is never going to go away.
Gotcha.
And we said that the people that are going to be buying these hundreds of thousands of dollars of homes are going to be smelling this. It's a fact. It is.
Gotcha. And then I did send an email to the transfer station because I was just curious if there's anything in their workflow that they could do to reduce that. So I'm just still working with them on this. So curious if this is gonna, make this better. But yeah, but I'll let you guys know if it did work out or not.
Please do. And if this, among other subjects, is something that you and others would want to bring to the committee for discussion, we can certainly take that up. You have my email. I'll put it back in the chat, but you could certainly email me, or certainly I'll defer to Shobana and the immediate West Side community. If you wanted to address this within your community, that's fine. But this committee can certainly take that up. I want to make sure that Emily has her. I'm sorry, you are Emily. Your wife's account.
Yeah.
Allie, excuse me. Sorry. Back to you, Allie.
Yes, just one more thing on what I had
Certainly.
mentioned before. I know we were talking about the Montgomery County owns, a part of this retail space by our house on Flatbush, and talking about, the county needs to, make sure that it's economically beneficial. Well, just based upon the few visits from food trucks in our neighborhood, I think they definitely want to return. They're getting great outcomes from their visits to the West Side. I think that our neighborhood, our community could certainly feed the economy, in terms of retail, shopping, just certain things that may go in. I think that this community could and are more than happy and willing and inviting any sort of retail. I think we could definitely contribute to the county's economy in terms of that.
Thank you very much, Allie. Noted.
Thank you.
Absolutely noted. Okay, so we are at 20 after 9. Other topics that anyone wish the committee to address at this meeting? And again, Adam and Karen, thank you both very, very much. And Karen, I'm remiss in thanking you properly. So thank you for your time. And Adam, again, thank you for your really helpful report. Really much appreciated.
Jeff.
Love to have you
for
back.
the invite, and
Absolutely.
just reach out if there's anything we can do on our side as as the developer, but also as on the homeowners association side as well. If there's something that we can support on behalf of the residents, that we're happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you. On the heels of that, Adam, let me just say, and I'm gonna kind of paint this picture broadly because I think it's worth it. It's living here is often very confusing, and I'm not talking about the West Side. I live in Park Overlook. Sometimes when one sees something that needs to be addressed, one doesn't know, is it a county? Is it MCPS? Is it parks? Is it planning? Is it a private entity? Or is it the state in the case of 370, that route? And Will Wall, who was on the call earlier, reported some down signage on 370, and as well as a damaged fence. And MC Montgomery County 311 looked into it, and it's actually WMATA property. The fence and the sidewalk, the fence and the signage, of course, is WMATA. But and they're going to fix it by the end of next week. By saying we kind of exist, as many communities do, in a multiple jurisdictions. And my own experience has been kind of getting bounced around from one authority to the other. So, I'll speak, humbly and say, been there. If I can help and be a resource for people, I'm happy to do it. Even just be a sounding board, because I've gone down a number of avenues, and that's how I got involved with the bus depot advocacy in the first place, because I was getting tossed around from county office to county office, not getting really any clear answers. So that's how I got involved. So to your point about welcoming people reaching out, thank you so much, and really appreciate that. And with all deference to the West Side community, because you guys are primary and foremost in that regard, because of how your community is growing in wonderful ways and deserves to continue to do so. So again, my email's in the chat if anyone wants to be in touch with me. I want to thank Nkosi Yearwood for his organization of this meeting and our being in touch. Nkosi, thank you for your support. I realize there's an uptick in kind of the advocacy of the community around this committee, and I'm grateful for your flexibility and your understanding and your support. Anything else anyone wishes to bring up? Emily, or Emily's husband, you have something?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down. My bad.
Not at all. Not at all.
Thanks for help.
Yeah, I forgot your name. Forgive me. Okay. Okay. So with that, I want to thank Nkosi too for recording the meeting, and we'll put that up as soon as available. And Carol, thank you for taking the minutes. And certainly probably having the recording would be helpful for the minutes, so we can organize that offline. Thank you all very, very much. Shobana, thank you. To all of my fellow committee members, thanks for a really informative meeting, and we will reconvene in October. Thank you all very much. Have a good
Take
evening.
care.
Bye-bye.